I think part of the reason we're all here today is really to see what can be done to rectify the situation, or at least not keep on the pace we are. But fundamentally, it's really all about creating the momentum to get more people involved in saving the planet, to put it like that. But clearly there is need for action if the next generation is to survive and make a livelihood over the oceans as my generation has.
Important convocation of minds to talk about a matter that, of course, faces us all, a planet in peril. We as a species, 7 billion people strong, we are threatening the very sustainability of life on our planet, in our oceans, in our terrestrial environments, in ways, of course, that is unprecedented in human history. If you take the oceans away from the planet Earth, we know take life away.
We have a single word that defines our planet. It's absolutely polluted. And it's polluted because of people. But the real good news is that people can also solve the problem. So what we're doing is saying, we're looking at this to secure our children's future and we're looking at pollution as a whole. And when one looks at pollution, what is the most tangible form? It's in fact the plastic waste, it's the rubbish. Of course we've changed the atmosphere, of course we've changed the waters, of course acidification has taken place, and isn't it frightening that nowhere on this planet can you take a breath that's entirely pure? Isn't it frightening that nowhere can you drink a pure drop of water, that every morsel of food is contaminated, and that wherever you go, there's plastic?
This bay, Algoa Bay, is the most studied on the African continent. And it is due to the work over all these 40 years of this university and Skymoen, which is a state entity. And so they have their boats and they go out every day, and there are more than 100 buoys and underwater sensors that are being monitored, and remote sensing is part of that as well. LiDAR and radar, low angle radar detection. We also have within the Institute a research diving unit. I'm mentioning these things because this is key if one is talking about the topic that we have. We've heard about the importance of remote sensing, sensors, UAVs, etc. A research diving unit is critical.
Vessels on the open sea very often see the sea as a dumping ground. We should develop a legislative compliance register. In other words, what legislation, for example, with waste disposal? Do you have to have a waste disposal mechanism on board your vessel depending on the size? South Africa, the establishment of the super official that can board a vessel and check compliance with a register that is developed. The program is to develop training programs for fisheries law enforcement officers and all other role players in the criminal justice system. Can we increase the success rate of the prosecution by training prosecutors? There's a trade-off between marine living resources and drugs and firearms, and international networks supplying firearms to gangs in South Africa that further the aims of the poaching community, etc. What we do, our training model is we do training, but then we also provide post-training support where the officer is involved in the enforcement activities and they are encountered with a problem that they don't know how to address at that particular stage. Then there is somebody that they can call that is on standby that can give them advice.
Plasticus sat outside the Commonwealth Heads Government meeting in London. 20-ton, 10-metre model made up of plastic of a whale, of a full-size whale. And that represents the amount of plastics entering our oceans every second globally. 8.3 billion tonnes of plastics have been produced since the 1950s. And if we don't curb it, 34 billion tonnes will be around by 2050. 150 million tonnes of plastics already in the world's oceans, and 12 million tonnes entering each year. This is not an issue that only pertains to a certain group of countries. It's a global issue. Everyone has to. It's got to be a global process. It's one that requires government, private sector, the civil society, and the people. It means people making decisions and choices, personal choices about where they want to travel. In our case, what we want to buy, where we want to buy it from. So the conservation of the planet is a cause that unites all people. It doesn't recognise barriers. It doesn't recognise borders.
Let's take a few minutes and remind ourselves of why we must care about the oceans, why we must deal with marine waste, why we must deal with fisheries crimes. And it's very simple and it's very profound, because we know that healthy oceans are crucial for all life on Earth. The 7 Seas directly support livelihoods and whole communities, providing nutritious food and potential for prosperity for hundreds of millions of people around the world. Our oceans must be sustainably exploited, but also responsibly managed, conserved, protected, so that they continue to contribute to the well-being of mankind. We need green growth for a green future. This is why we're here today. Some studies suggest that the ocean receives an estimated 8 million metric tons of plastic waste per year. And did you know that this means that about 3,000 tons of plastic have been dumped into the ocean since we started our event this morning? Such debris is unquestionably one of the world's most pervasive pollution problems. And the consequences we see are proving to be devastating. Only by sharing experiences and knowledge will we be able to find the sustainable solutions to our global challenges.
So we as Oceans and Coasts have started to think around a more management approach to dealing with coastal marine litter. So we started to look at a source-to-sea concept, a source-to-sea approach, and essentially it is, let us go back to where the sources of waste and litter is before it becomes a problem in the coastline, which makes it a little bit more challenging to manage. Our minister has signed the Clean Seas campaign last year in December as well, where she has committed that we will actually be upscaling our recycling efforts. We will be enhancing our industrial waste management plans and extended producer responsibility, and we're starting with the packaging industry. So it's just small steps, but we're going to get there together.
So packaging was conceptualized in response to the problem that we're all here to discuss today. There's an astounding stat that only 5% of South Africans recycle, and this obviously leads to a lot of visible waste that we see lying around, and particularly you see it in South Africa, at least around your informal settlements. And a lot of this waste is packaging material from household products, which is mostly recyclable, and therefore it's valuable. So we looked at the reasons for this very low recycling rate, and came up with 3 very important factors. The first is that a lot of people are not educated on recycling, so they don't know what it's about. Some people don't even know what recycling is, and they certainly don't know how to get involved if they do. There's often very little infrastructure, sometimes none available, particularly in the areas where packaging focuses, to get involved. And most importantly, there's no incentives. So people don't want to get involved in recycling. It's seen as inconvenient and a nuisance, especially when they're not getting anything in return for it. So our job was to come up with a solution to this problem, and this is where packaging originated. Packaging solution is quite simply to incentivize recycling and give people something in return for changing their behavior in a positive way.
Yes, and I think international cooperation is quite crucial because every sitting I go, as I said, there is a lot happening on the ground, and see how we can collaboratively conglomerate all these initiatives and start identifying pointers to where the gaps are and where support will be much needed. And let's have a movement. I believe I'm a child and I'm mentored by a lady called Wangari Maathai, and therefore I'm a great believer in that movement, collaboration, working together is where you get real high impact in terms of the actions we take on the ground. The habits we developed, the behaviors we developed with us, and that's why when John mentioned bringing children and young people to the core of the actions we take, I think is very crucial. And I think we have to aspire that through this network, children become key players and key, I won't call them beneficiaries, but key champions of this network.